Our thanks to David and EJP for sharing their garden with us. We really appreciate it. Right now, we're going to be turning our attention to the spiritual side of gardening, and I'm really looking forward to it because I'm visiting with an old friend and colleague, Billy Myers, who's now a counselor and works with families and couples, and has done some exploratory work, and he actually uses gardening as a tool in your practice, don't you?
I do. In fact, thanks so much for having me here, by the way.
Sure thing.
I've wanted to catch up with you for a long time. I thought we'd do it over lunch, but in front of television cameras, that's another good way to do it, I guess.
Right.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I've had a practice in Austin for about 8 years. I'm a marriage and family therapist. I work with individuals too, but often with couples and families. And I'm really lucky to do what I do. They're a huge blessing to me. In fact, my last weekend, one of my clients brought me a watermelon. He brought me a seedless watermelon out of his garden, and it was the sweetest thing I think I've ever tasted.
In exchange for payment, right?
Right. Yes. I also take live chickens and any other kind of produce. The insurance companies don't like that.
Right.
But yeah. So I think it was a tip, maybe, or something. But yeah. So, but I did notice that a lot of my clients do garden. I mean, maybe most of them do. And so I wondered if there might be a connection between emotional healing, spiritual growth, and gardening.
Well, I'm a big believer in those connections, obviously, and I often considered why we garden and the benefits or the blessings, in your phrase, of gardening. What have you, in thinking about why we garden, what has kind of percolated up for you in terms of a response to that?
Right. Well, there's definitely a practical side of things. Like I get free watermelon out of the deal, which is awesome. But also, there's more of a deep emotional connection that we have. A lot of times, we're so isolated these days. We have Twitter and Facebook and all of those things that's supposed to connect us, and they do in a way. But a lot of people feel that technology kind of gets in our way. And so we're not connected so much to the outside world. We're in a computer screen all the time.
Right.
So when we garden, if before we're up in our head, we garden, our hands are physically in the ground. We are grounded, right? You can't get any more grounded than that. We're connected to growing things. We're connected to the weather in a way that we're not. If you're not a gardener, you're just like, oh, is it going to rain? I need my umbrella.
Right.
If you're a gardener, you're definitely looking at the rain in a different way.
Yeah.
So it connects us to the world, and that connection is a thing that I think is missing.
Well, a sense of connection is really important because, I mean, if you just think of the words humus,
right.
It does bring us back to something that's very essential. And what I also think about is how it takes us out of ourselves. It connects us with something much bigger.
Yes.
Humans often long for the touch of the eternal.
Yes.
If you want that, just go put your hands in the dirt, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. That's exactly right. And in the prehistoric days, the people that can manipulate plants, that those societies flourished, right? And so there's sort of a deep connection when we're around growing things. You take a walk in the woods, and pretty much anyone will feel calmer or more relaxed.
Right. Well, I mean, as I said, it takes you out of yourself and it puts you in touch with something that is profoundly nurturing, but it also is independent of you and requires something of you. So it's also pulling something of you out. You can't be a gardener without taking on a commitment and answering the call of responsibility as well.
Absolutely, responsibility and faith. You're stepping forward in faith.
Yeah, you're talking about gardening in Austin. Faith is an important matter.
That's right. We talked before. Suffering is a big part of gardening. But all of that. It triggers us in some ways. Like what if my garden fails? It looks terrible. What are the neighbors going to think? Right? Maybe that'll reflect badly on me. And so there's a lot of areas that we can grow and learn in gardening. So.
Well, I do think that that profound sense of connection that you're talking about is probably the greatest gift of the garden, and what I feel is the response is really this profound sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the ability to stop and actually pay attention to the little things. And I think that, we were kind of talking amongst ourselves before that we got rolling here, when we talked about how quickly life seems to speed by.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, it does if you're not paying attention, especially.
Oh boy, yes.
And
paying
in the
attention.
garden,
Yes.
you're really called to slow down and be particular and respond to particular kinds of things. And it's a way really of kind of slowing all that down too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I like the idea of connection with the infinite that you said earlier. It is we prepare the soil, we put a little seed in there, we put water, and then we let go.
Right.
And have faith that it's going to come up. I'm not growing that seed. There's something else. There's
Right.
something else. And so we do open ourselves up to the
Right.
infinite.
So let's talk about how this works in your practice a little bit, Billy, for individuals or for couples.
Right. I really love gardening with families. It works great because anybody, any age in the family can do it. People at 80 years old or 8 years old can do it. It's exercise. You're outdoors. It can be strenuous or not strenuous. For families, we have to have cooperation with each other. We have to communicate with each other instead of tweeting to each other. We have to, and so it's a great activity for families. For couples, I think one of the things I love about couples work is that. Okay, we plan a garden together in the spring. It's a tacit agreement that we're going to be together in the fall. It's like, why am I doing all this work now if I'm leaving in 2 weeks, right? So if sometimes people have a hard time saying, I love you, I'm here for you, I'm with you, but through the language of flowers and gardening, we can say, this is important to me. I'm putting my time, my sweat, I'm investing myself in this. It's
Yeah.
not just lip service. I'm showing you that I love you and that I'm here for you.
It's a sign of faith in the future and hope.
Oh,
Right.
big time. Yeah,
Yeah.
big time. And a big commitment to each other. You have to be nurturing to get that little garden to happen. And so that's one of the things I
And
love
just
about it.
working through the collaborative process of what needs to be done too. I mean, I often think that if you want to be in a relationship with somebody, it's not just being with them. It's doing something with them.
Oh, yeah, that's very true. And so, when I work in session, a lot of times we talk, it'd be a great idea if you had better communication. But how do we do that, right? And so we're out there butting heads. I told you to put those other things near the sidewalk, right?
You were supposed to plant that in a row.
Exactly. And it's all messy, right? Right. And so it gives us an opportunity to express that and in kind of in a safe way. Like the worst thing that could happen, your garden doesn't look that great, But it's in some ways it's a metaphor or a way that we can work on our relationships.
Some of us get a little obsessive about our gardens, Billy.
Do they? Yes, I've never heard of that happening. Right.
So I mean, there are some things that you need to learn, I think, too. And the garden teaches you about, for example, for those of us who are obsessive about perfection, perhaps, in the garden.
I don't know anyone like that.
Then you encounter something like 110-degree days.
Right.
And then you kind of learn a lesson that maybe perfection isn't such a great goal.
Right. Well, I think some people, every little leaf is in place, and then some people are chaotic, and I think that's just like a function of personal style. But I will say that it does give us insight to maybe where we're comfortable, where our comfort zone lies. And I don't think either one of those extremes are better than the other. You
Right.
can kind of choose your whichever ones you like.
Unfortunately, Billy, on that note, we do have to wrap it up.
Well, that went
Speak-
by pretty fast.
Speaking of things speeding by, right?
Yeah. Well, I would say you can't be a pessimist and plant a garden. And so a garden is a great statement of optimism.
Great. Well, Billy, thank you so much for being here.
Hey, thanks.
All
I
right.
enjoyed it.
And coming up next is our friend Daphne.